Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I want to say thank you to Piero for inviting me to speak with all of you, and to Stanford Arts Institute for creating this entire series. It's just very near and dear to my heart. As Piero said a few years ago, I was a Fulbright Fellow, and during that time I began creating an overview of Javanese cosmology. My focus there was on traditional Javanese concepts of time and what I call multidimensional reality. This is a framework conceiving of our place in the universe that's rooted not in intellectual thought or in rational thought. It's rather in the interrelationship between humans and nature and spirituality. So many people know that Indonesia has the largest Muslim population on the planet. Most of the people that I know there are still very influenced by traditional ways of knowing. So I'm going to give you a tour of a body of work that I generated there. It's entirely generated by me. And as I understand, no other overviews of this knowledge have been created before. So what you're going to see is a part of a series of diagrams and part of a series of video sculptures and a sound installation. These are entitled "The Beginning Was the End," and this title has many different sources, one of which is a story called Muruakala, and Muruakala translates to the beginning of time. And this also translates to the source of darkness. I've heard it called the source of darkness. I'm going to begin with this story. So, Pataraguru, the god of gods, was flying through the glow of a twilight sky with his wife Devi Uma. And far below in the ocean, they passed by an island on which Pataraguru saw two giants making love, and he got really turned on. He wanted to make love to his wife. And so he goes after his wife, and he pursues her, and she rejects him. She's not into it. And this does not deter him. He is spurred on by this, and he decides that he wants to take her by force. So she slips from his grasp, and in his frustrated masturbation, his sperm falls into the ocean far, far below. This sperm does not just dissipate into the waters, these warm, saline, womb-like waters. His sperm actually lives and grows. It continues to evolve, and Pataraguru is watching this happen, and he is wincing, because this residue, this manifestation, is from this potential act of evil that he was about to commit. So he looks to all of his lower gods, and he says, "Fellas, I need you to help me out. I want you to take care of something for me. Can you just make that thing go away?" So they all take all of their Empyrean weapons, their maces and their spears and their arrows, and they send them deep into the heart of this coagulating mass that's thriving nicely down there by now. And as they enter this body, the clash from these weapons gives life to this thing that was life that is not life. So it heaves and pulses, and it mutates into a giant, monstrous, angry baby. This thing turns into, eventually, a monstrous monster. And it hauls its giant body up onto a tiny island, and it's very alone and confused about where it's from, and begins asking the skies, like, what am I? Where did I come from? Very confused, very alone. It's not of this earth. So Pataraguru, the god of gods, eventually says, as much as revolted as he is, he cannot deny his responsibility. And he admits this to this monster. This monster eventually comes to be called Batarakala, the god of time. So Batarakala is getting hungrier and hungrier, and he's tried to eat boulders and logs and sand, and none of these things are satisfying his hunger. He doesn't know anything about what to do where he lives. So he finally comes across a young cocoa palm, and he grabs it with his giant mitts, and he pops it into his cavernous mouth hole, and does not see that a young boy has crawled into the palm fronds to collect the fruit. But this sweet unusual taste is completely satisfying every hunger Batara Kala has ever had. And he says to Batara Guru, the god of gods, this is the stuff. I want more of this. So Batara Guru has a very troubling problem on his hand. He can't have this unnatural product of his loins going around the planet just eating human flesh willy-nilly. So he says to him, I'll make you a compromise. You can eat sweet little human children. Only those that have not been cleansed by a dalang, by a shadow puppet master, who has performed ruatan, a cleansing ritual. And he persuades another god to go down to the earth and become a dalang and perform ruatan. So what we're doing, this is in this mythology, as with any myth, what we're doing is assigning symbols to perennial forces in the universe, in nature, and in human characteristics. And we're taking these symbols and we're casting them into a narrative and allowing them to interact like a game. And in this sense, this is myth has a very contemporary relevance. So in this story, Batara Kala symbolizes this residue of this act of evil. Now, and he goes around eating human flesh. This is something that he winds up doing in the story. When human beings are the recipient of an act of evil, or even if, say, you have a conflict that's unresolved, we might say to someone, like, what's eating you? You know, like, you've got something in your gut, you can feel it in your gut, and it's this energy residue from this thing that is unresolved. So this thing living in your gut, in Javanese thinking, we refer to it, it has a name, it's called sukarta. And in this diagram that you see right here, this is ruatan, this is describing the energy behavior that takes place in this cleansing ritual that I described or I referred to in the story. Now, in this you will see and I don't expect you to try to read this, all of the different aspects of Javanese culture that are present in here, and all of the people that are present are represented in this diagram. So the residue that lives in your gut as a living thing, this is representative of Javanese thinking in general, that everything is alive, including energies. So what we're doing with ruatan is designing an atmosphere that's extremely attractive to this thing that's living inside of you. And what we're doing is bringing together music and smells and batik patterns and this story, murwa kala, to seduce it out of the person. So this energy is being drawn out, and when it is successful, it can be unsuccessful, we cut it symbolically out of a person using a lock of hair. This lock of hair is symbolic of that residue now, and we cast it back into the complex of positive and negative forces that are surrounding us at all times. So this viewing of all things as being alive aligns beautifully with cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception. He's down at UC Irvine. And what Hoffman says is perceptions are a user interface between us and an objective world. He says, quote, "Space-time is our species-specific desktop on which physical objects are icons, representations for their actual content." So, meaning all of the things that are even surrounding us in this room right now are like representations for the thing that is actually there. Like, this is a veil of reality. Behind it is a much more real reality that's going on. So in Western thinking, human beings bestow consciousness onto people and things and other stuff sometimes. In Javanese thinking, physical things are consciousness. The world actually consists of what Hoffman calls conscious agents that are interacting with one another. Now, if all of these forces are alive and they have their own behaviors, this is present in this diagram that you see right here. The Tatal, Pawukon, Tatal meaning wood, Pawukon meaning week calendar. The Tatal is a device expressing time in terms of infinite cyclical patterns of natural, social, supernatural forces, and according to the Tatal, each day reveals an intersecting complex of these energies expressed in compressed detail in a single symbol carved in a block of wood. This is a perennial calendar. Anyone who can read this can determine the soul of a day as far forward or back in time as possible. And this just contains an astounding amount of information. Time is very much based on mythology in Java. At the bottom left, you'll see a diagram that refers to the difference between how days are considered different in Java versus the West. Instead of being predicated on daylight and nightlight hours, the day begins at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the apex of positive energy, and it transitions toward negative energy at about 6 o'clock, and so on in a 24-hour cycle. So some people are able to align their human body with these forces and energies that I'm referring to in this talk. And these forces and energies being present in this same time and space that we occupy right now. We're not experiencing them, but somehow they're able to do this, to navigate across them. And in my research, I focused on people like Dukun, who are the closest thing to a shaman in Java, and to Javanese professors of philosophy at the universities that were my sponsors. So what I asked them is, how are you using your consciousness differently than, say, I am, or all the rest of the lay people? And what kinds of things are you actually encountering in these other realms? So on the right-hand side, you'll see levels of consciousness that people are able to, that people have available to them. And as they're engaging in these levels of consciousness, on the left, there are the different aspects of reality that are available to them in those places. While I was doing this research, it was very metaphorical to me of the many interacting worlds theory, in which we posit that parallel universes may be interacting with the universe that we're experiencing. And recently this has been updated to say that we may be able to see this on the quantum level, these interactions. So this diagram symbolizes how our perceptions predicate the way things are. These are coordinated aspects of our existence, everything that makes up this metaphysical soup that we call reality. And I'm going to read to you the text at the upper left. Humans enter this world with 4 siblings or saudara: black, wisdom or ill will; red, anger; yellow, desire, specifically sexual desire; white, purity; and this blue-green at the center is something called suksma that I will refer to later. Holding influence over human perception, they have the power to obscure the truth, and they fill the substance of the world. The 4 elements, the cardinal directions, the Javanese days of the week, time, the Javanese alphabet and language, sound. One's relationship with each of them can be fed through fasting, sleep deprivation, meditation. So our relationship with these aspects of ourselves determines our level of balance or imbalance in our lives. And also by seeing ourselves reflected in nature in this way, we're much more able to live in concert with it. So suksma, I referred to in that center, that blue-green color. This also lives in your gut. This is your perfect twin. And it refers to this tether to your unknowable source. It's like the part of you that's your intuition. It's the part of you that's connected to information or knowledge or God, whatever you want to call this crystalline matrix that makes up reality. So I should say that Javanese traditional knowledge is endangered, severely endangered, and because of this I designed my posters, my diagrams after Indonesian educational posters, just like this one. This is the only piece that I did not create. I designed all of my pieces after these with the intention of reintroducing them into the Javanese classroom as kind of an intervention for deeper discussion on these subjects. So this diagram represents another aspect of the work that I did there, in which I focused on the intersection between my philosophy and Javanese thinking. There's some very uncanny similarities, and this describes my ideas about knowledge as a living thing. When we are, say, in a brainstorming type of situation, people are coming together with the sole focus of bringing a creative spark. And what we're doing when we're engaging in this kind of behavior is kind of courting knowledge. And when we behave in this way in accord with knowledge, then it sort of opens a window and it can come in. So this is actually a diagram of a uruatan, of a cleansing ritual that was performed by the dukun, by the shaman that I worked with, on the son of Suharto, the former president of Indonesia. And the same type of behavior is occurring. Everyone is coming together with the same focus. So many of my diagrams are very intellectual constructs, and Javanese culture is not intellectual, so I really wanted to create a more groovy, sensuous experience of this way of knowing. So I created a series of video sculptures. This one you can see is based on the former diagram, the forms inside of it. And I really wanted to give a visceral sense of multidimensional being to Western audiences. So I created a series of video sculptures entitled Hypercubes. What is intended in these artworks is that they're like a three-dimensional chunk erased from the fabric of reality that we're experiencing right now. And if you could erase this thing and have like a hole in the air, then you might be able to see these forces and energies that are present in this same time and space, for which we do not have perception ability. So let's look at an example. Okay, with the interest of linear time that we're dealing with here, I'm going to scoot ahead. So again, these are not objects, but they are triggers for experience. Okay, here's another one. I also I created a sound installation that you're hearing right now. I worked with members of a new media laboratory called the House of Natural Fiber. They are now called Life Patch. And what we did was we mic'd the totally dominating traffic noise that was just totally dominating our exhibition space. We ran it through a series of filters in Ableton Live, and this played on top of the ambient sound to give a more tangible sensation of how these the interaction between these forces pushing through space on this multidimensional level. So this concludes my talk. I want to say thank you to all of the sponsors that have supported this work, including the David Berman Foundation, which isn't listed here. And I should say that I'm currently a finalist in the Smithsonian Artist Research Fellowship, and I hope to be working with my nominator to develop new media versions of the diagrams that you've just been looking at to kind of capture the imagination of younger generations in Java toward repatriating this knowledge. So, thanks very much.